Alright, the last lesson of the unit is again on 3D geometry, so you will need your calculators for this lesson. So let's look at question number 1. It says find the volume of a perfect sphere that has a radius of 1.4 times 10 to the 5th units. So in order to solve this problem, we have to figure out what formula we're going to use. Because it says that it's a sphere, we are going to use the formula for the volume of a sphere. Write it down, see if you get it right, and then compare with me to see if you have the right answer. Alright, so the formula for the volume of a sphere would be V equals 4/3 pi r cubed. Okay, and then we're going to write down what the radius is. So the radius we know is 1.4 times 10 to the 5th units. So I'm going to write down the radius equals 1.4 times 10 to the 5th power. All right, now here is where we're going to apply all of our rules that we learned from scientific notation in this unit. This is good review for you. So I'm going to take V and I'm going to say equals 4/3 times pi times what the radius is, which is 1.4 times 10 to the 5th power. And then I have to, according to the problem, cube it. Okay, so now in order to do this, I have to figure out what this number is when I cube it. So I have to figure out what 1.4 times 1.4 times 1.4 is. So that's where you're going to need to use your calculator. So let's figure out what 1.4 times 1.4 times 1.4 is. I end up getting 2.744. Okay, so I'm going to write down that the volume is equal to 4/3 pi times this value that I got here, 2.744, times 10. Now, you have to remember, if you have a power raised to power, what should you do with your exponents? See if you can think for a minute what you should do with the 5 and the 3. If you said multiply, you are absolutely correct. So I'm going to multiply 5 by 3, and I get times 10 to the 15th power. Now I'm going to do my multiplication of all my numbers I can put in my calculator. So I can put 4/3 in my calculator, I can put pi in my calculator, and I can put 2.744 in my calculator. So I'm going to put all of this information in my calculator. So I'm going to type in exactly what we have here. 4 divided by 3. Okay, so again I'm going to take 4 divided by 3, and then I'm going to multiply it by pi right here. Then I'm going to multiply it by 2.744. Not times 10 to the 15th power, because my calculator, there's a way to do it on my calculator, but I'm not going to worry about that. So I'm going to say equals, and I end up getting V equals this whole long number times 10 to the 15th power. So 11.494, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to just go out to this place right here for right now, and I'm going to say that it's 11.494 times 10 to the 15th power. So I'm going to go ahead and write that out. So V equals 11.494 times 10 to the 15th power. But here's the thing, this number right here is not between 1 and 10, so remember, we got to adjust it. So this becomes 1.1494 because I moved it over 1, but since this number gets 10 times smaller, this should get another 10 added onto it, so it becomes times 10 to the 16th power. Last thing that I want you to do for the purposes of my class is, if the number is given to you rounded to the nearest tenth, then your final answer, keep it in the same term, or keep it rounded to the same value. So 1.1. There's a 4 that comes after it, so I keep this a 1, times 10 to the 16th units cubed. All right? And that's my final answer for this question. If you didn't get what I said, please make sure you go through and rewatch whatever part you missed so that you can understand it. All right, let's read through number 2 and determine what type of a shape we have. It says find the volume of a cylinder that has a radius of 4.7 times 10 to the 5th power and a height of 3.6 times 10 to the 4th power. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the formula for the volume of a cylinder, which is pi r squared h. Now, I know the radius is 4.7 times 10 to the 5th power, excuse me. And I know that the height is 3.6 times 10 to the 4th power. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in my information. So I get volume equals pi times the radius, which is 4.7 times 10 to the 5th power. And then I have to square it according to my formula because it's radius squared, times the height, which is 3.6 times 10 to the 4th power. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to attack is this expression right here. I'm going to figure out what this is in slightly easier form. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out what 4.7 is when I square it. All right, so same thing, I'm going to grab my calculator and figure out what 4.7 times 4.7 is. So 4.7 times 4.7 gives me 22.09. So instead of this right here, I'm going to say 22.09. So I'm going to replace this as 22.09, and then I need to figure out what happens to my exponents. Remember, if it's a power raised to a power, I got to multiply those exponents, so it's times 10 to the 10th power. And then I'm just going to copy the rest of the problem down. 3.6 times 10 to the 4th power. So that's times 10 to the 4th power. Okay? All right, so next I need to figure out what all my constants are when I multiply them. Now my constants are my actual numbers, not my bases or my exponents. So I'm going to multiply pi by 22.09 by 3.6. So let's go ahead and grab our calculators and do that again. So I'm going to type in pi times 22.09 times 3.6 equals 249.83, so on and so forth. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write a few digits down. So 249.832, I'll write that out. So my volume equals 249.832 times 10 to some power. Now this time we have a multiplication sign. So when I have 10 to the 10th power, multiplied by 10 to the 4th power, think about what you should do with your exponents. If you think you should add them, you are absolutely correct. So this is to the 14th power. And then I have to do my adjusting. So this number right here is way more than 10. So I need to move my decimal place over twice, or basically divide it by 10 two times. So this becomes volume equals 2.49832 times, since I divided out 2 tens here, I got to add 2 tens here, so this becomes 10 to the 16th power. Lastly, all I need to do is make sure that I have it rounded correctly. Since these are given to me in tenths, I'm going to put my final answer in tenths. So I'm going to say volume equals 2.5, that 4 has a 9 after it, so I'm going to round it up, times 10 to the 16th units cubed. All right, there you go.